Hey everyone, this is Heidi St. John. Welcome to the show. You guys know that I am passionate that God's people belong in every sphere of influence. We belong in education, we belong in medicine, we belong in politics, for goodness sake, and we belong in business. And today my guest is going to talk to me about biblical entrepreneurship, and we're going to make a case as to why this is an amazing time in human history for you to be interested in and maybe even pursue a career as an entrepreneur. This is the Heidi St. John podcast. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. Today's show is being sponsored by my friends at Not Consumed. Not Consumed is committed to writing family Bible studies that are engaging the entire family. And you can check them out at notconsumed.com/Heidi for a free 5-day family Bible study. Check it out, notconsumed.com/Heidi. You can use the coupon code Heidi when you check out for 15% off your entire purchase. Not Consumed is writing Bible studies for families so that you won't be consumed by life. Check them out, notconsumed.com/Heidi. All right, my guest today is Patrice. Say it again.
Tsague.
Tsague.
That's right.
The problem with me is I read this and then I can't actually say it. Patrice Tsague, he is an entrepreneur, an adjunct professor, co-founder of several businesses. You're a walking miracle. You've got your hand in so many things. You serve as the chief servant officer of the Nehemiah Entrepreneurship Community and the chief executive officer of Smart Oregon Solutions. This is the second time I've had you on the show. It's just an honor. Thank you for coming.
The pleasure's mine. Thank you.
I want to jump into this because this seems to me to be an incredible time for God's people to engage in the marketplace. And every day I turn on the news, and I know you're doing this too, and there's a new headline about regulatory environments that are changing under the Trump administration. Many people calling this the Trump effect. And we've seen over the last probably 30 to 40 years, Christians kind of shrinking back from at least boldly being Christians in the marketplace, shrinking back from proclaiming their faith where they work or where they go to school. And you've made a really strong case for biblical entrepreneurship. So I want to get into that today. But before we do this, tell me a little bit about your background, where you came from, and what you're currently doing.
Yes, thank you. Well, first, Heidi, thank you so much. What an honor to be here. Great facility.
Thank you.
The work you do here is amazing, incredible. You're working on something that is not only key for our country, for the kingdom, but for the world, the education of our young people.
Yeah.
Come alongside parents and equip and empower them to have the freedom in education.
Boy, it matters.
That's powerful. That's powerful. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I was born in Cameroon, Central Africa, and was born in a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather was entrepreneur. My grandfather was entrepreneur. My mother was entrepreneur. My grandfather was also a second-degree king in Cameroon, with about 90 wives.
My goodness.
I call him the real King Solomon.
You're royalty. I would have changed my outfit.
So Mom was born, she was one of 250 children of my grandfather. And she went on to not only start a business, but she went on to do politics. So I grew up in that kind of environment, that kind of setting. There was this expectation. Obviously, my grandfather was a legend. Expectation that you're going to do something amazing and wonderful, right? But I was not exactly the smartest or the most disciplined kid. I like to have fun. I mean, that was just me. So I was the kind of kid who my daughter right now remind me so much of me when I was a kid. I'm like, oh my gosh. She looks at me straight, she says, I am you. I said, oh gosh.
How old is she?
She's 24 now.
Okay, all right.
And so I was sent to America at 11 years old. My grandmother made the case to my mom that I would be sent to America. So my mother would hesitate. I kept wondering why. As I got older, I realized something. The tradition was that when you got to be 18, finish high school, then you were sent to Europe or to America. That was kind of for well-to-do families. That's kind of what the pattern. My family, for sure.
Now they send you to America for what's the purpose?
Education.
Okay.
Before it was Europe, I was the first of my mother's children to come to America. My mother had visited America in the 19...
Was the plan for you to stay then? Or
education.
just to come and get an education?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mother had come to America in the 70s, and she loved America. Think about it, in the 70s, remember, Africa just got, the inner colonies was in the 60s. So just 10 years later, so for many Africans who had more relation with Europe, America was like the new world. So my mother come here, she was like, wow. So she went back, she says, okay, Destination America. So I was among the first. My aunt had come 5 years prior to me. I'm the first to come to this new world. Of course, I'm thinking I'm coming to the land of Michael Jackson, right? Straight paved with gold. I'm thinking television. I see this in America. I saw on television.
Yeah.
Well, my aunt, she lived in the ghetto of Washington, D.C., about 5 blocks from the White House. One bedroom apartment with already 3 kids. And I landed there. I'm like, why in the world?
This is not what I saw on TV.
This is not what I saw on television.
Yeah.
So, but then I was going to a $12,000 a year school. Look at the contrast of that.
Yeah.
Where in that moment, Tarzan was still on television. So when you talked about where you come from, that you rode in Mercedes-Benz and so forth, people look at you like, whatever, you're from Africa. So that was kind of my introduction to America. I wanted to go back home.
I bet.
I mean, I fought for a few years. One of my aunts came to visit from Paris, and she one day I was, fighting and arguing, and I called my mom, and she looked at me. She said, "Pal," that's what they call me. She said, "Do you know whenever you call mom, my mother's think about how busy you are. That was my mom.
Yeah,
right? That was her world.
My heart goes out to her.
When you call mom, you interrupt her work.
Whoa,
is that what you want?" And it just sank, because I love my mom. The idea, and we all respected her, we admired her. The idea that I would be interfering with her work was like, I said, okay, I'll stay in America.
That was all it took?
I know. I was like, okay, I'll suffer in America. That was kind of my attitude.
And how old were you at this point?
At this point, I'm about 13 years old.
So you're just 15. A kid.
Yeah, I'm a kid.
You're just a kid.
I'm a stubborn child. I was a stubborn kid.
Yeah.
I was a stubborn kid with a heart for justice. If I felt that the rule is unjust, I became even more stubborn. And I was entitled to, I was a terrible kid. So I decided to stay in America. So the next several years, I would just, stick it out. But I was still angry in my heart.
And where were you going to school at this point?
At this point, Washington National School in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Yeah, and then my mother made a business deal with an American businessman. And part of the deal was that he would pay for my school, my education. Well, like any smart businessman, he took me out of that $12,000 school, put me in a $3,000 to $4,000 school in Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Come on.
But guess what? That was God's divine destiny.
What?
Because now in that school, it was a traditional American school. While the international school was great, but all the kids were diplomats, World Bank. It was not American.
Very elite.
It was like very elite.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm getting closer to Jesus, because he takes me from this elite, I would go very liberal. All my friends from that school today are
leftists.
100%.
Yeah.
If I would have stayed, he puts me in a school ran by Adventists. At Tacoma Adventist High School.
Okay.
In Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Okay.
So that's when I get a dose of God, but I did not become a Christian because the legalism.
Yeah.
And I kept fighting Christians. I was like, you guys are such hypocrites. I mean, literally, I debated in Bible class why that God doesn't exist. And my basis was that if he does, why do you behave so? That was and I won the debate, literally. So that was kind of, and basketball ended up saving my life, because I became an avid basketball player and I was good at sport. So that kind of got me into a rhythm where I began to walk away from the rebelliousness, this anger, and just embrace this destiny of America. The other thing that happened to me my mother had invited me back to Cameroon at 17 years old, I believe. And when I'm back home, my mom, so I'm coming down the plane, I have earring on, and I have my jeans, and I look as American hoodlum as you can,
man.
right?
I bet she wasn't happy about that.
Well, so she's standing there in front of her car. My aunts are behind her. They're kind of all in this entourage. And I'm seeing behind her, everybody looking at me like, who in the world is that? But my mother looked at me. You and I have talked about your own kids and how the love you have for them, that unconditional love, that I know your son, and he was in my class.
Yeah.
And I know his journey.
Yep.
Literally, my mother saw through past the behavior and saw my destiny. And she looked at me. I was like, everybody's looking at me with disgust. She's looking at me with love. She takes me, she puts me in a car. Now, in Africa, when you are the boss, you ride on the right side of the car, typically Mercedes-Benz, right? Whoever rides on the left side, so the boss is on this side, whoever you're this side, means you're like the second most important person.
Okay.
Either they're somebody very important. So she took me, put me there, held my hand as the car drove. And at that very moment, I felt pride and guilt. I just said to myself, I got to make mom proud. And I decided that it was like almost like a first salvation. At that moment, I said, you know what? I had to be ashamed of myself for not making this woman proud. So I decided when I go back to America, I'm going to be my mother's son. I'm going to be the prince that I was called to become.
Wow.
And that's when my transformation began. It was the love of a mother, the unconditional love of one of the most powerful women in Cameroon, who looked at me beyond my behavior, beyond my look, and saw potential. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me and just loved me. Come back to America. I stopped by Paris and bought all new clothes. I'm going to be a different kind of guy.
You're not going to look like a hoodlum?
I'm not going to look like a hoodlum. Took my earrings off. When I came back to school, they're looking like, who in the world is this? Do you know the peer pressure of my friends was so challenging because the Patrice they knew was not the prince that came back, was that hoodlum. They wanted that hoodlum back. But you know what saved me? Basketball. It so happened that I became the captain of the basketball team. And that brought a sense of responsibility. And now I had to behave like a leader. And my coach said, Patrice, you're not the captain, and I need you to lead. And that sense of responsibility with my mother's love and my desire to become what I felt I was called to become is what propelled me towards this journey. But then, unfortunately, after high school, first year college, my family goes bankrupt. So there was
your family in Cameroon?
In Cameroon. There was civil unrest in my country. And my mother used her influence and resource to try to stop regime change. And they came after her. She was beloved, but she was on the wrong side of history at that very moment. And so she had to be saved by the military.
Wow.
So that just took my family to a whole nother. But you know what? The enemy meant for evil, God meant it for good. Because it was that incident that led me to go into business. Dropped out of college.
Because now your family has no money.
I have no money. Money stopped coming. I called Mom. I said, Mom, given where things are, would you mind if I go ahead and start my own business? She said, son, go for it. And I'm 19 years old and I'm going to business. So I start the company, my mother's company. I opened a US based operation.
What did it do? What does the
import
company?
and export. So my mother has several businesses. One of them is that she had an import and export company where she created these multilateral, multinational agreements with U.S. and European companies to bring certain kind of products.
So she bring things through customs.
Exactly.
Got it.
So and vice versa. That was mainly on the other side.
Okay.
So I said, okay, I'm gonna do that. I've seen her do. I've interpreted for her. I've been there in meetings when it occur, and so that's just by instinct. Okay. And I've always wanted to be in business because I always admired my mother. I was just like, look what she did, and just wanted to do that.
Yeah, you just admired her.
It's like a good excuse to drop out of college. I hate to say it.
Well, I wonder, I mean, we're hearing more and more voices talking about college, and really, Charlie Kirk probably most famously says college is a scam, because a lot of these kids are going and they don't know what they want to do, and they come out and they don't do the thing that they just spent $160,000 to learn. And we're not really training up kids to be independent thinkers or to look and see what are your skills and abilities. We're not training them in entrepreneurship.
Absolutely.
And I find it fascinating that some of the most successful people in the United States never went to college. They either dropped out, or they just simply never went. And it's not necessary all the time.
As an adjunct professor, and all disclaimer, George Fox University and Portland Bible College, who never went to college, right?
Yeah.
I love teaching in college.
But a good college would see that gift in you, and they wouldn't hire you because of a pedigree behind your name.
That's right.
They'd hire you because of what you did and what you were able to accomplish.
Here's what I love about college, which you're right, most colleges not this way, but here's what I love about my classroom college. I see these eager young people who are trying to pursue business, and my class is an elective. So
because you teach entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Trying to pursue business and Christ. Mm-hmm. And they're hungry. Mm-hmm. And this is not an academic class. Mm-hmm. Right?
Spencer loves it.
This is practicum. This is, there's some foundational stuff, but it's about how do you make it. And I use literally, when I was launching my second business, I would use my business as a case study in the classroom to illustrate to them what this looks like. So I like that about it, but you're right. Most classes are not that way. They're not practical. Mm-mm. And that was my issue. Mm-hmm. I was like, how am I going to use this in the real world? Mm-hmm. You know what's funny? Out of all my education, which was not much, what I've used the most in life is what I learned in basketball and my typing skills.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I was in typing class, I thought it was for girls. Remember, this is the 1980s.
Hey, listen, man, I learned to type on a manual typewriter.
Exactly, that was me.
Which you really, you got your pinkies got real strong.
You can't look at it.
No.
So at that time, I was like, why am I typing?
We were still using whiteout.
Yes, this is for girls. But the only reason why I stayed in that class and learned was because my teacher was nice. Right? Mm-hmm. I endeared her so I wanted to see because of her. That became the key skill. So here I am, a 19-year-old young man, I bought a computer.
Yep.
And folks are shocked that I can type. As a business consultant, guess what? That has made me a lot of money.
Yep.
Because I know my way around computers. Mm-hmm. I can type. Mm-hmm. I can type better than my assistants. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So there's some things that are good about it. But unfortunately, not something else. That international school, that was very liberal. So I was not as academic there. But you know what? A lot of stuff that I learned. So once you discover purpose, nothing else is wasted. The challenge, to your point, is that schools do not focus on purpose. And if the kid never realizes purpose, he never contextualizes what they've learned. So accumulation knowledge is not bad unto itself, but sometimes it keeps us from discovering purpose, because purpose is only discovered when you discover God's purpose and plan for your life.
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
And I love that you said that. Once you discover purpose, nothing else is wasted.
That's right.
And and this is what I love about the homeschool movement, because parents are spending all of these years helping their children discover their purpose. What are your gifts and abilities? What are your talents? Rather than just putting a child in a prescribed method of education, we're tailoring the education to meet the unique needs and abilities and passions of the child, of the student. And that's where the magic happens.
You know, my assistant is a homeschooler. She was homeschooled all her life. And every time I've hired maybe 3 homeschoolers. There's a difference. Mm-hmm. The humility, the confidence, the assurance, the skill level is night and day comparing to those who went to traditional schools. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure you know the recipe.
Yeah.
Because they're taught about who they are, why they are, and everything else comes after.
Yeah. Well, and the schools are wasting the time of the kids, really. I mean, we're wasting time when we're not trying to find out what makes you tick. I think I always like to tell audiences, because I talk about this quite a bit, that I graduated from Portland Christian. I mean, you and I have a mutual friend.
Went there.
Yes, and we have a mutual friend in Bill Gibbons. And I went there kindergarten through 12th grade. And I was a great student. I loved learning. But no one ever, I look back at a lot of my report cards, especially when I was in grade school, and Heidi's a great kid, but she talks too much. Over and over again. Heidi's is 5th grade. Heidi, really love Heidi. She's a delight to have in class, but I had to separate her from her best friend Sharon over and over and over again. Or Heidi was over here, teaching this. And when I was in high school, I ran for student government, became president of the student body. No one ever said to me, I wonder if you might be a teacher.
There it is.
I wonder if you might be a speaker. I wonder if you might go into media. It was never, none of that was said to me. Instead, it was, here's the college preparatory track. We're going to put you on this.
Right.
And it was boring to me.
That's right.
I was bored by it. And there was nothing that I studied outside of history, which I loved. There was nothing that I studied in high school, even on that college preparatory track, that prepared me really for what I'm doing today. But the signs were there.
Yeah. So in a sense, traditional education, it frustrates, it ruins the unacademic and frustrates the academic.
Yes.
So it's not good for anybody.
It's not good for anybody. Boy, I agree.
It's funny you saying that. So I think I was 15 years old. The year before, I think 2 years before I went I was my mother. One day during Black History Month in my high school, they asked, would somebody like to speak for assembly for Black History Month? And at that point, I was a radically young Black man who really had a passion for the history of Black people. And nobody raised their hand. Now, I was a rebel, so I was like frustrated by that. So I raised my hand. Now, remember, I'm the most unacademic among my peers, right? I'm the last
But you're
person.
passionate about this.
Passionate about it. So I raised my hand, and they said, everybody shot Patrice, And so I prepared my speech. And on that day, Heidi, when I gave my speech, it was at the assembly, the response I got from my peers and my teachers and how I felt, I knew at that moment I would be a communicator.
Yep.
But you know what? They gave me a standing ovation, but none of my teachers
But they didn't channel it.
met with me and said,
Yes,
Patrice, we saw something
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
How you've been behaving is not you. How do we channel it?
Yeah.
That's what you're
Yeah.
saying. It's
Yeah.
like,
look at
what's
what the
happening.
gift and ability that's already there.
That's
What
right.
is the spark that just lights by itself, rather than here's a book and here's an assignment and we're just going to have you plod through it. I think I was in probably my 30s. My whole speaking career was an accident, because I was organizing a conference in Seattle, and the woman who was supposed to come speak for the women's luncheon didn't show up.
Wow.
And so the team asked me to fill in, and I was like, oh, no. I am the name tag girl. I am not doing that. I don't want to do it. Well, my husband said, you've taught Bible study at the church. Surely you can write some things down and talk about it. Well, I ended up being kind of forced into it because there was no one. And when I got done that, telling you, Patrice, my knees were knocking, my voice was shaking. I was like, why am I doing this? But as soon as I stood up in front of those people, the Lord did something. And when I stepped off that stage, my husband beelines it to me from the back, and he goes, I have never seen you do that before.
Man.
How did you do that? I'm like,
look at God.
That wasn't Toastmasters.
That's right.
That's just a gift that God gives you. And I think as parents, we should be looking for that. People say that public speaking is the number one fear of most people.
Yeah.
And when you see a person who's bent toward it, something's going on.
Exactly.
Something's going on.
Exactly.
And what would happen, Patrice, if we as parents and business owners and community members started looking at our young people with eyes that were geared toward looking for gifting? And when you match the gift with an opportunity, bam, now you got something.
You just said something, and hopefully those entrepreneurs who are listening to your podcast caught it. It's not just about academics or parenting. It's also about as a leader in the marketplace. the way that you identify the diamond in the rough among your staff. One of my team members today said, Patrice, what I appreciate about you, your ability to bring all of us together from different backgrounds, different gift set, and being able to see each one of us what we bring to the table and make room for it. And as different as we are, and that was the highest compliment, right? Because when great organizations are built around great teams.
Yep.
And great teams are not a manifestation of perfect people, but rather it's a leader. Think of Jesus, a leader who's able to identify diamonds in the rough, the Peters, John, right? All the different disciples.
Yeah, Matthew
and bring them together, make room, even the Judases, because the Judases keep us on our knees, right? Because a redemptive culture is one that hopes and believes in change, leaving the outcome of judgment and consequence to the Lord.
Yeah.
And being willing to accept God's will, right? So it's not a thing where it's eternal mercy, but rather is eternal redemption, but then letting the consequence fall where they may.
Yeah.
And that kind of culture, Heidi, is one that transforms communities and businesses.
Yeah, and you've experienced it.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, you've experienced it. You've seen it work. We see it here, working at the Homeschool Resource Center. Now we have dozens of people that work here. Many of them are volunteers. And I think looking to see where is the unique gifting and how can you match a gift with a passion and look to create that team. Because really, we've all been, you and I have both had employees that you're like 15 minutes in, you're like, they're not going to work.
They don't work.
You can tell because either they lack the work ethic or they lack the skill.
Exactly.
And what we're trying to do, even as employers, I think, is match somebody's skill 100%. With an opportunity, because 100%. That's when you're firing on all four cylinders.
So which means when academics fails them, hopefully the marketplace can redeem them. So as employers, because they're all going to end up at a job somewhere, with a church, with a nonprofit, with a business. How can we as marketplace leaders become that second place of hope? Yeah,
we have an opportunity. And you really have found a way to sort of channel this to not only benefit your family as an entrepreneur, but also to give job opportunities to other young people. You operate a for-profit, right? As well as a nonprofit. So what motivated you? Because I always like to tell people, listen, I mean, I never went to business school, okay? I mean, I fell into running a business in the same way that I sort of fell into speaking and even writing. I didn't set out to be an author of 10 books. I just, the opportunity presented itself. But the struggles are still there business-wise. And Jay and I always tease people and say, we put the non in nonprofit. It's just like my strength and our love, both me and my husband, is really visionary. Yeah. We're visionary leaders. We see some things that aren't and go, why not? Why can't that be? How can we make that possible? Because we know that God can do anything. But you've dabbled, like I have, in both the nonprofit. I mean, you threw yourself into it, right? Nonprofit and the for-profit world. Why did you choose to do both and not focus on just one?
So I got tricked into nonprofit, to be honest. Because growing up, I didn't know it was such a thing.
I understand
idea of
that.
Nonprofit was like, nonprofit? How do you do business without making money?
You're like, nonprofit, that's a dumb idea.
Exactly.
I'm not doing that.
So that was, so my attorney, I'm at this point, I'm not saved. But my family is kind of going through, and I walked away from the family business because sibling rivalry.
I'll do it.
Because I made the mistake of trying to replicate what my mother was doing, So as by default, it was a family business, even though I was the one starting it. So out of that fight, so my girlfriend then, who's my now wife, I said, you know what? It's not going to work. Let's walk away. So I walked away from that family business. So what I was going to do. So while I'm consulting, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, I started an entrepreneurship club.
And you're still very young at this point.
I'm still young. At this point, I'm about 20. So my
you had a baby.
I know. So my peers are like admiring what I'm doing because this is before the internet.
Because you're going for it.
I'm going for it. So they're looking at me. They're really admiring me. They're like, Patrice. Now at that point, a lot of my friends are who dropped out of college, either selling drugs, or they're working like.
And you're still in DC.
I'm still in DC.
Yeah.
So
it's rough.
They said, "Hey, could you teach us how to? Could you teach us how to do business the way you are?" Now I'm not getting any money. I'm just entrepreneuring.
You love it.
I'm loving. I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
So I then started a club. So I started bringing friends of my family who did business with my family to come and speak for my club. So then one day my attorney says, you know what you got going? I said, what, you got a nonprofit going? I said, what's a nonprofit? He says, well, if you really just want to help them and you're not concerned about making money out of it, that's a nonprofit. I said, you know what? I really do want to help them.
Yeah.
So that's how I incorporated nonprofit. It took me 5 years to learn how to do it right.
Yeah.
Right. So now I had to get my mind shifted. Okay, how does this work?
It's a lot.
At first I thought it was no profit.
Yeah.
And then I learned, but anyway, so that's kind of, and then I get saved. So at 21 years old, I get saved. And that's when the Lord kind of gives me this vision of my own curriculum, biblical entrepreneurship. Now that to me, I said, nah, that's something to get excited about. Now, to be honest with you, when I got saved, a year later, when God gave me that vision, I said, hey, that's my own IP. Now, as you know, as an author, the idea of intellectual property is like, wow, right? Like when you got something unique.
Yeah.
So I've always been chasing something. Remember, I walked away from the family. So I'm looking for something.
That's yours.
That's mine, that my siblings can't take away from me. You see the passion is still there. That my thing that identifies with who I am. And God gave it to me. I can't even take credit for it. I get saved and I'm fully there. And one day I'm in church, I'm at a retreat, and the Lord just speaks to me. Biblical, those two words have never been brought together. Yeah. It's an oxymoron at that point.
Yeah.
Biblical entrepreneurship, it just hit me like, I said, wow. At the end of the retreat, I go to my mentor. I said, I'm going to create a curriculum on biblical entrepreneurship. He looked and said, what? He said, Patrice, you gone mad. He's like, I want to get you saved, but you just gone to the deep end. I said, but listen, if my family had run their business based on the word of God, we would not be in this situation. We'd be diversified globally. I mean, I had all this revelation. He's looking like, what happened to this young kid? I said, here's the thing. I've been training a lot of my friends selling drugs, how to do business legally. So I'm saying, I've been trying to get them to move from drug dealing to legalizing their business, but I'm not doing anything by their hearts.
Yeah.
I said, they're no worse than the Wall Street guys. They're all drug dealers. Yeah. Their hearts have not been trained. I'm making this case my mentor.
Come on, yeah.
So I stopped putting this thing together. So that's how a nonprofit comes. So it becomes a nonprofit ministry. By the grace of God, we've done it around the world. Now, but along the way, I kind of saw myself as a teacher, as a minister of the gospel. And I've always done consulting. I've had clients around the world. But the idea of starting something else was something I kind of resisted because I didn't want to be distracted. But about, my mother died 10 years ago, left about a $20 to $50 million estate. The estimation is unknown because it's all over the place. In Cameroon. And that got us into a succession battle that we're still fighting today.
Wow.
And so 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, I went back to Cameroon because I was going to protect my younger siblings. On this
How many siblings are there?
6 of them.
Okay.
6 of us. But my mom, she had a state funeral, so she was kind of the beloved of the country. So it's an estate that we're dealing with family dynamic, political dynamic, and national dynamic. So I'm caught up in this whole battle. So I decided that I'm not going to run like I did when I walked away at 20 years old.
From the family business. Right.
Because I realized that had I figured a way to have a hands in family business while doing what God called me to do, we would not be in this mess. So God, I said, I'm not going to run away. So I decided to go heads on. So I realized though that if you're going to try to save an estate that's worth about $20, $50 million, you need to have the resources to be able to deploy in a way that doesn't hurt what you're doing on a routine basis, right? I mean, I'm not poor, but Lord, I don't have that kind of cash.
Right.
So I decided, I said, you know what? I need to start another business that gives me the upside, that gives me the margin, that enables me to be able to deploy significant resources in a situation that I may not get it back.
So you're diversifying in effect.
Exactly.
So you have this nonprofit over here, and then you're realizing I got to have another engine to generate more income so I can do the thing I need to do over here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So because of the nonprofit, I'm doing coaching and consulting, and coaching and consulting, you're selling time. Right. So I was like, okay, I need something that I'm not selling time. So that's when I got into renewable energy. And I discovered, to be honest, by accident. I bought a license, a churchill license from a guy who was a crook, for these solar street lights. And the technology was great and the innovation was good, but the guy had no character. But out of that, I discovered the industry. And my partner, Bill Gibbons.
Yes,
when we first discovered it, I said, Bill, we got to do this. Bill's like, what? Are you crazy? I said, Bill, we got to do this. I've been looking for something with upsides.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I saw it, I knew it was it.
Yeah.
I said, Bill, let's do it. Bill was like, he took like a couple of months praying about it. I said, let's do it. And Bill is not shy. So Bill normally jumps on. I'm like, what's wrong with you?
I know.
But anyway, by grace of God, we launched it. So we have two companies, Smart Organ Solutions. We provide smart renewable energy products, smart street lights, smart displays, smart city softwares, EV chargers. And so we also have Smart Optim Solution where we're doing it internationally.
Okay.
So literally within 2 to 3 years, the Lord just grew that company. And we recently merged it into the company. So it literally was what the Lord laid on my heart years ago. So I'm full-time running really three. My consulting company is still going on, and the nonprofit and the for-profit.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how we got into it. But it's kind of fun because I've been coaching many businesses and raising capital for a lot of businesses. And for the first time, I'm kind of doing it where I'm the captain of the ship, and it's kind of fun. Yeah. Scary, but
well,
fun.
And I think, there are a lot of people who look at starting their own business and they think, I'm going to start my own business and I'm going to be the master of my own destiny. And they don't realize that the person who owns the business is always businessing.
Oh my God.
Right. Yeah, because you're kind of always, it's hard to take a break when you're the person who is in charge of it, or you own it, or it's your responsibility. It's hard to put it down.
100%.
It's hard to really share that sort of burden effectively. And when you think about entrepreneurs, I'm curious to know, when someone comes to you and says, I want to be an entrepreneur, I have an idea, are you also looking to see, do they have the personal mettle to pull that off?
Oh, 100%.
Is this person, do they have, you almost got to have on some level either nerves of steel or you have to have like chutzpah, like, okay, that didn't work. I'm going to go back and try it again and try it again and try it again. Tell me what you're looking for when someone says, I have an idea, and you're trying to assess, would this person be a successful entrepreneur?
You got to either be real stupid or be real crazy or a combination of both.
A combination of both.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because, so when I launched this renewable energy business, my wife was like nervous.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm risking everything. And and she was, but there was something in me. So what I look for, it's funny, I just thought that this morning before I came. So we have a process that we develop. Over 25 years, I've turned it into a formula, right? So what I look for is I have this 7-stage process that I use to kind of evaluate first of where you are. The first stage is discovery, where your calling is clarified, the idea is solidified, where is something I want to do, called to do, with God with it or not.
Right.
Then startup, where you launch, then break even when you're driving enough revenue to equal expenses, then profitability, where you have margin, sustainability, which is the idea stage, where you have systems and the right people in the right position. Where
so sustainable.
Where you have freedom. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to get people to. And then scalable when you're expanding it, and then succession and exit, right? So those are the stages. So when somebody comes to us, okay, what stage are you in? And based on what stage you are in, and most people, when they come to me, they're either at discovery where they're thinking about it, they're a startup where they've launched and trying to figure out what they're doing, or they're profitable, but they're not experiencing sustainability. That's typically where they come to me and say, I want to raise capital, or Patrice, trying to integrate my faith into this business, or I'm trying to make it work.
Right.
So in that process, then it's kind of where the drilling that you just talked about occurs. And part of that drilling, so a business plan is defined, it's kind of the planning process. We define a business plan as a body of assumptions, right? And those assumptions are based on certain pillars or a framework. And those frameworks are intuitive instincts. So, which is, by the way, the gift of the entrepreneur. So in other words, that's okay, do you have the instinct, the intuition? And that comes through the metal testing, through the trials and error, that's what gives you grit.
Yeah. So that when the thing that you thought would work doesn't work, you don't just give up and go crying off the field. You go back and go, okay, I still know I'm onto something. Let's come at from this direction.
Exactly. Do you have discernment? Can you see it? Or are you just dreaming, trying to be a copycat?
Yeah.
Next thing is experience. Okay, what have you done before? And I'm not an engineer, Heidi. I've never thought I'd be doing something around renewable energy. But you know what? If you look at my journey, have you built something? Have you succeeded at something? Have you been faithful at something? Not that you can't change, but it's just going to take you a lot longer. Right. And it's okay. But I want to now test your faithfulness. And so many folks say, Patrice, I'm trying to raise capital. I heard you raise money for businesses. I need $1 million. I said, okay, how much have you raised before? Nothing. How much do you have? Nothing. It's okay. So we have to go back. Let's try to raise $1,000 first.
Right.
They're like, what? I said, yeah. Let's try to raise 2,000. Let's try to raise 3,000.
It's actually harder than people think it is.
Exactly. and then after a while, what I call this exponential. But then God does that.
Yes.
You see, so what happens is, particularly my beloved Christians.
Yeah.
Right?
I love how you preface that. Get ready.
That's all right.
He's going to throw down.
We have an attitude where we think because God is in it, or because we put him in it, or because we've talk about him, we assume that it's all going to be easy and great. That's kind of evidence. That's the prosperity gospel. That's a lie.
God wants you to have a parking place at Macy's. Patrice, come on.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
That, whether it was Nehemiah, my own coaching some practice, or Smart Organ Solution, there have been days where literally I go to bed, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Yeah. I know. I know that feeling.
Yeah. But that is right there at those moments. I said, God, I've never, and I've trained myself to do this. I've never felt closer to you, for I never needed you more.
It's good.
And I said, God, what is your will? And I've got to be, there've been many times like Abraham, I've got to put Isaac on the altar. And I've seen God resurrect him so many times. And those when I said, okay, God, truly you are with me. And you can't do it conditionally.
Yeah.
Because, Heidi, sometimes failure is a pathway for discovering God too.
Yeah. I heard someone say several months ago at an event that I was speaking at, we were talking about entrepreneurship, and we were talking about the opportunities that hopefully will present themselves in this new environment with President Trump in the White House, because he's a businessman. He's a very unique figure. Obviously, in American politics, he's a very unique figure, but he's also very unique in the world of business and as an entrepreneur. And we were talking about failures and successes, and he said to me, Heidi, sometimes God's rejection, the rejection you feel from men, is really God's protection.
Amen.
And we can't look at the rejection. And sometimes the Lord's teaching you, you got rejected. I still have this for you. You've got to go back. But sometimes it's really his protection. This is not the person.
100%.
This is not the time.
100%.
This is not the business.
100%.
And we have to learn to cultivate, that discernment. There are a lot of people listening to this show right now that want to get off of the maybe they're working for Walmart and they're just sick of working for the man, right? And they want to work for themselves. And what you're saying is, it isn't as simple as I have an idea. It's cultivating character inside 100%. Of you and seeing, do you have the call on your life that will help you get from I have an idea to sustainability, to scalability, to finally you can make an exit strategy and you've got a business that will run itself.
100%. You mentioned President Donald Trump. So if you look at his path, his journey, I love.
It's extraordinary.
As a case study,
it's
he's a great
extraordinary
case study.
Yeah.
Both in politics and in business.
He knows who he is too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So when you look at his journey, we focus on where he is now. Mm-hmm. I was because of what I do as a business consultant trainer, I had to study a lot of entrepreneurs, and he was one of the guys that I would study.
Yeah.
Right.
The art of the deal.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you look at his journey, do you know how many times he failed in politics? People forget about this. He ran as a independent at one time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is right, Patrice. I forgot
100%.
about that.
People forget about it. So when you look at his political journey, you see, but then you look at the business journey. Do you know how many times he's failed? But the one thing that everybody admired about him, really what made him, is kind of what's making him a really successful politician. He always had a way to turn his disappointments into opportunity. One of them is he and you can check it out and look. So he filed for bankruptcy, and he had a lot of debt from banks, and he realized that the banks were more afraid of him losing it all than he was. It's called leverage. So he realized that, wait a minute, and he discovered it kind of by accident, that
they didn't want him to file bankruptcy.
They didn't want him to fail.
So now he's got some leverage.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
So he then used that. There's a course that I teach called Nothing But a Jar of Oil, right?
Nothing but what?
Nothing But a Jar of Oil, based on 2 Kings chapter 4.
Yes, all right.
Right, so the woman with a jar of oil who was indebted, facing bankruptcy, her husband had died, she goes to the prophet Elijah. And she said, my husband, your servant, is dead, leaving me in debt. And now the creditors are coming to take my children enslaved, because back in those days, if you owed money, couldn't pay back.
It was rough.
Guess what?
Yeah.
So think about Trump. He's in that situation. And so the Elijah says, what do you have? Now think about it. He asked a bankrupt widow, what do you have? He ignores the fact that she said that her husband died, leaving her in debt. He says, what do you have? What he recognized, I'm going to get back to the Trump story. What Elijah recognized is that God never leaves any one of his children, anyone, in a situation with nothing. When you recognize that, and then she says this, I have nothing but a jar of oil. The narrative goes that Elijah ignores the nothing and builds everything around the little jar that she felt was worthless. So when Trump recognized that, he says, wait, I got leverage. They don't want me to fail just as much, worse than me.
Yeah.
And then that when everything turned for him. And then what he also learned is that the name and IP and intellectual property was worth more than a building or a facility.
Wow.
So he began to build his brand. And so many of the Trump towers he didn't own. He owned the rights to the name. They would license his name.
I did not know that.
He made more money on the name.
So someone else owns it, but his name is on it. And now he's building his brand and their property.
Exactly. So
Genius.
So all of me doesn't know. So what he did, he recognized with licensing the rights. That's why, and part of that was because he emphasized on excellence, on quality. So he built this Trump name as a mark for high value property.
Yes, the opposite of DEI.
Exactly.
Right. He's into merit based. I'm going to build this brand and it's going to be worth something.
Exactly. So many times people say, okay, because of his father, undeniable that he had a head start. Just like I had a head start. Without my mom, I would not be where I am today. But what he did with what he was given is what you got to then focus on. Because there are a lot of folk that had a head start, Heidi, but not everybody does anything with it.
That's right.
Let alone become president twice.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you like the policy or not, that's
I'll tell you, he's an icon now.
That's right.
I mean, love him or hate him.
That's right.
And of course, everyone knows I love him. but he's an icon now. And I notice that there is a renewed sense of interest in this country, particularly as it relates to young people, because of the rise of the internet and now AI. I heard an announcement this morning, I don't know if you heard it, that China... I mean, they've upset the markets, right? This is sort of their Sputnik, right? They've upset the markets by introducing an open source AI that has the AI industry reeling today because they did it for so much less money. And as I was listening to them talking about that this morning on the news, I was thinking, well, you know what that's going to do? It's going to push more innovation. So rather than look at that as a disappointment, I say we see it as an opportunity, certainly in the United States, because it's going to push innovation. People are going to have to, it's competition, and we should welcome it, right? If we're going to get better, you welcome the competition. You don't look at it like, oh, that's a disappointment. You say, okay, this is an opportunity.
But here's the other thing, though. We do business in Asia. Both DMI and SOS. China doesn't have the character.
That's for sure.
Has.
Yeah.
So you can have.
They don't care about intellectual property. That's for sure.
You can have a technology, but it takes more than a technology, right? Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't be alerted, right? It's the pursuit of innovation. So it does have that positive effect, the inspiration. But as long as America remains a country of freedom. A pursuit for God, an environment where risk is rewarded, where private ownership is honored and protected. That will outdo China any day. It's not our technology, it's not our money, it is our ideas and our values. That's what makes us winners.
That's right. That's right.
Only in America can there be Patrice Tsague.
Yeah.
You follow me?
Yeah.
So not in Europe, only in America. So those are the things. And to be honest, when you think about the Trump effect, that's the benefit of that process. Because like him or hate him, he's creating an environment where America goes back to the values that makes America. Because he also recognized that what made him a success, he was a major risk taker. He pushed the envelope greatly. And an environment of freedom, of respect for property right, of true justice, an environment that honors and common sense is an environment that kind of thing can exist.
Well, and it will, and if he can, and I think he will. I mean, what we've seen him accomplished in just a week of his presidency is, well, it's unprecedented, I think, in American history. But I think if he can roll back the regulations and deregulate the environment, I think it will unleash an entirely new wave of American entrepreneurship, because you take away that red tape and take away the oppressive taxes. I mean, here in Washington State, this is not an environment for entrepreneurs. You and I are doing it by the grace of God, but this is not. I mean, the house that I just bought this summer, we bought it from a guy who had a thriving business in Washington and said, well, forget it. And he left his house, this beautiful home that he had lived in and built. He left it and moved to Florida. People get frustrated. I will say, though, Patrice, it makes you tough when you live here.
100%.
It kind of toughens you up. You've talked a little bit about faith and values, and I was just hearing you say only in America can a person like you be as successful as you have been. But your faith and your values have really influenced the business decisions that you have made. How would you say that for people who are listening, they need to look and see how their own faith and their values should impact the decisions that they make?
It's fundamental. So if you look among nations around the world and you look at what makes America unique, the formation of America was faith infused. There was an intentionality by the founding fathers, despite the imperfection, of inviting God in, because they learned from all these countries. They pulled the best of the best. So if that is true for the world leading superpower, now let's talk about us as individuals, right? As we consider, just imagine for a minute, Heidi, the founders in a room as they're contemplating a minority group in the world. They are weaker than any other nation, right? They're trying to form a nation. They're trying to challenge the superpower at that time, which is England. And they're doing something different. We're going to create a system where God is at the heart of it. In God we trust. We're going to give human freedom. So as individuals, if that has worked for America,
and they did it at great risk to themselves.
100%. Remember, they ran from Europe because of religious persecution. And now they're going to create a business in a nation that has its heart. So for us as individuals, if it's true for America, it's true for us as individuals. So the question becomes, what is the thing that is most enduring and lasting? At the end, when you strip us of everything, as human, we're spirits. And as spirits, we have a creator. And that creator has left us a guideline, a constitution called the Bible. And if we build our lives and make decisions for our business and our families based on that constitution, I know because I came from a godless family. My father, my grandfather, the king of our tribe, he was not a Christian. You know, he believed in multiple gods. As a matter of fact, to a certain extent, he believed he was God. So I know greatness that comes without God and greatness that comes with God. And I know the difference. The difference is one is long lasting, one is eternal, one doesn't have these side effects, while the other is, you know, it's temporal. It's not eternal. That's the fundamental difference. It's about, and that's why I would bet on America any day than China. Because at the heart of China is not God.
It's communism.
It's not freedom. I mean, think about it. I welcome the competition. We'll win it any day because over time, that system will fall apart. And this one we endure. We're not afraid to fail. We're not afraid because guess what? It is in failure and in challenging. When God is there, everything is beautiful. Even when God is there, Donald Trump can be president. When God is there, I mean, all things are possible. So we live in an environment of possibilities. So when we talk about why bring God in, because it creates possibilities. When you keep God out, then everything is tied to human logic, to human limitations. Is that what you want? No. Quick story, my daughter, she hates when I talk about it, but I can't help it. She says, Daddy, can you use my little sister for a change? I said, when she give me good material like you do, I'll use it. And then she started reminding us that when she was a kid. But I've watched my daughter walk through mental health, walk through all kinds of issues, alcohol, and walk through. And in that whole journey, Heidi, I've seen redemption, right? You know, it's not, God doesn't make everything perfect, but it makes everything beautiful. And in that journey, I've discovered the beauty of my daughter, and I've watched God do a thing in her. I've gotten closer to her. And she would not be as great today had she not gone through that experience. That's why God. So as a parent, it's painful. As a human, you want perfection. You want all things needed together. Think about it. You're so well packaged, Heidi, but your teachers in a Christian school, they like the academic parts of you. They even like the beauty part of you, but they wanted to control and manage. They want you to be the, like Miss America, they're like, but Heidi, you're not, but then that's the part they were trying to manage that made your success.
That's interesting. I would never have thought of it that way. But as you look, we look back over our lives and we see things that are missed, I think, mostly. And we wonder what would have happened if we had gone a different direction or if somebody would have seen something sooner, which is why I think what you're doing is so important, because if we can get these young people out of the gate and start to really teach them to find the gifts and abilities that God has given them in the environment of the pursuit of a biblical entrepreneurship, that really does make all the difference. And I wonder, I read, I don't know if it was a book or an article, someone, not to keep bringing a Trump up and beating the dead horse, but someone said to let Trump be Trump, right? Stop trying to control him. Stop trying to regulate him. Stop trying. I mean, he did a bunch of things, especially in his first term, that I was just like, ooh, get that guy away from Twitter. Please stop tweeting. We'll do anything. But it's his unique personality and his unique gifting that's allowed him, that God's given him opportunity, and he's done extraordinary things with it. I think this is going to be an amazing season over the next several years, especially for people who are interested in launching businesses. You have really devoted a large part of your life to teaching entrepreneurship to young people. And my son has benefited from your class. Right. He's a super fan. He was so excited.
He was one of my best students,
He's so excited when he heard you were coming on the show. He's like, what? You can see Spencer saying that, right? What? He was excited. Tell us a little bit about the biblical entrepreneurship training program that you have that you've started.
Imagine if the Bible and an MBA program got married.
Yep.
Right. It will produce biblical entrepreneurship. But except we call it a mini MBA. Because when you go to it, I've had many clients and students who've got MBAs and PhDs. And when they say all of them will say, wow, you stripped all the junk and kept just the good stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. But what I also said was, I never understood business the way I understand it now, even with my MBA and my PhD. Mm-hmm. But here's the difference. It's not so much about the content, but it's about the biblical framework. See, we go from, most curriculum goes from the natural into the spiritual, or from the natural and try to say, where does it fit spiritually? We did a flip. We went from, what does the Bible say about business?
So it's foundational.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And then now begin to then take it out from there. Mm-hmm. Principles, practices, planning. Mm-hmm. Right? If you look at biblical theology, it begins with creation. So we said, okay, when God first created the idea of business, what did he have in mind? Right? If you go back to Genesis, what were those ideas? Now I'm going to leave you goes wondering so they can take my course. But
I was just saying, you got to give us one.
I know.
Like one principle.
So then second, he said, okay, the fall. Something happened after God created everything wonderful and perfect. Chaos occurred. What did that cause for business? What consequences did that have for business? And then redemption. All right, after the fall, he then redeemed humanity. He brought a plan for redemption. What is that for business? So how do I, through my business, tap into God's redemptive plan? And then restoration, right? What does that look like? What does it mean, the fact that he's going to come back and restore everything? What prism? So an example of that is this. So let me use your organization example. So Firmly Planted is, you said, you know what, God's idea for education is that the parents will educate. Yes. So you went back to God. You said that if the original intent for God is that as parents, we'll be the one to educate our children.
Deuteronomy, absolutely, right. Yes.
So that God's intent. So you create an organization to facilitate God's original intent.
Yes.
You also recognize, despite God's intent, sin happened, the fall. Right? So there's chaos now because of the fall. So then redemption, you say, okay, let me create something that comes around parents to give them a pathway to get back to God's original intent, right? So you put the Firmly Planted is built around this idea of creating a process for parents to discover, walk in, and manifest God's intent, right? Restoration.
You just rewrote my mission statement. I hope Melissa's taking notes right now.
So then here's what happened. You also recognize that despite our desire to create God's original intent in this fallen world, we will never do it perfectly. So what does that mean? So you then recognize, Firmly Planted, as we do what we do, we have to recognize that because our hope is not in this world, that's not our hope. Our hope is in the ultimate restoration of all things. So you keep pointing to that ultimate place of perfection, which is eternity. So when things don't work the way you hope they would work, when things, whatever, there's grace and mercy. You remind your parents and your staff that, guys, remember this.
Yeah.
Despite all of that, we're going to do our best, but our hope is not here. Right? One day, all things will be restored again. Right? So it's like that, nice white dress that got dirtied up, though you got to wash, it will never be as though it was, again, until it's made new again. So that's the path. So a biblical entrepreneurship business is one that recognizes that, yes, we got to do marketing, we got to do sales, we got to do finance, we got to do administration, we got to do all the things we got to do. We got to do it in the context of a redemptive framework, bringing God in and allowing him to do what we cannot do ourselves.
So good. It's so good. And the more we hear voices like yours who are saying, listen, bring God in. Don't put him outside your business. Bring him in, right? He's the center. He's the foundation. He's the one who bless it. He's the one who'll give you the wisdom and the opportunity and the discernment to know which direction you should go. And you've had an extraordinary opportunity to really impact the lives of young people through this program, both at George Fox, where you're teaching, and also at Portland Bible College, where you met my son.
Also, Cornerstone Christian.
That's right, in Cornerstone. Yes.
Hopefully, one that's firmly planted.
Yes, I know we're working on that. Let's go. Let's go. It's so important because I think entrepreneurship is where it's at. I really do. I mean, the more we can create systems that are outside of the traditional government systems or the traditional systems of employment, I think not only do you see more Christians then in the marketplace, right? Christians then become the purveyors of solutions.
Amen.
Rather than just a cog in a wheel.
If you go back,
that's important.
If you go back to the Bible, if you think about the early Christians, they had really three options. One was work for government or non-Christian environments, which they were being persecuted for, which their faith was being shoved, or not do anything at all, or start their own business. Mm-hmm. And what was missed is that by far, the only reason the gospel advanced because Christian started their own businesses.
Yes.
Christian freedom.
Yes.
Christian created things that allows them. So I believe that you cannot separate entrepreneurship from the gospel, because gospel means freedom, and freedom means that you own your own destiny. And part of that, you got to create an economic engine to facilitate. When I faced my family situation, guess what I did? I started another business. I can do that. That's freedom. I didn't complain, whine, right? I was just, I'm going to start a business that we're going to create some money so I can come back and knock this sucker. No. So one
of the things that my husband has said to me, years ago, because we spent many, many years in full-time ministry, and churches, especially I'm not talking about your big mega churches and the ones that everyone knows about, but your general, run-of-the-mill church, they tend to keep their pastors just above the poverty line, right? They just keep you, you're just on the ragged edge all the time. And that's where we were for, 20 some odd years. And I was
unfortunate.
It's awful. I wish they would change the way that they see their pastors. But I mean, I'm working nights at the hospital. I was selling Tupperware. I was doing everything we could to supplement my husband's income so that he could work in the ministry. And when the Lord called us out of that, Jay said,
Didn't
listen,
you feel free?
Oh my goodness. Well,
it's like you got saved again or something.
That's a whole other podcast right there. But when God called us out of the full-time pastorate, I remember Jay just looking at me and saying, God does more. God's not just working in the church. God's working at the hospital. God's working at the city clerk's office. God's working at Fred Meyer. God's working everywhere. And God's going to do what he's going to do, whether I'm a pastor or whether I am a full-time businessman. You're still serving the Lord. And it was a light bulb moment. And then Jay said to me, why not, instead of feeling so frustrated by our lack of funds that are coming from this one engine, which was the church, well, when we need more money, instead of complaining, we'll say, Lord, help us to create something that provides for our family and still allows us to be ambassadors and ministers of the gospel.
You know what? I think the reason I like your husband. So what you experience, and that's what you just described, is the issue of many Christians. Now, by all disclosure, I lead the Marketplace Ministry at Banner House.
Yep.
And I get a chance to. I'm among one of the pastors, and I get the chance to teach and preach.
Well, and my husband is the worship pastor at our church.
Yeah. So, all disclosure. So we not against church.
No, right? Not
but
against church.
I do need to say this.
Yeah.
I need to say this. There's a difference between church and religion. What I do appreciate about my pastors is that they understand the call that God has for me. Mm-hmm. And as a result, that's how we relate. But the thing that the Christian, because sometimes, Heidi, we run from the entrapment of the world into the entrapment of church.
Mm-hmm. Come on.
And we become religious.
Yeah.
And leaders are either too unsophisticated, ignorant, ambitious or greedy, or just too dumb to realize it. I don't think that a lot of leaders is because they have bad hearts. Some do. But I think they lack the sophistication. They lack the aptitude, the spirit. I mean, there's a whole lot because of what's been passed down for years and years and years.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
our history, the way the modern church evolved through the same system of imperialism, same system of that created all the isms. It was
communism, Marxism,
we all came out of Catholic. We were all Catholic at one point.
Yeah.
Right. Look at the Catholic Church today. I hate to say this. It's a centralized kind of communist state. If you think about the way it works, it's centralized. That's not freedom. So if that's our cousins, that's our ancestors, all of us, we got some of that. We all Catholics. So we're trying to break away from this thing. And so even though the Protestant movement was all about protesting that thing, we've become that because that's all we knew.
Come on.
So to find true freedom, we've got to do what Martin Luther did. Go back to the gospel and say, what does the word of God say? And every generation's got to do that. And here's a problem. Our generation keeps regurgitating what we've learned and what we've heard. And the biggest perpetrator of that is, I hate to say it, is school.
Yeah.
It's Bible college. It's seminary. Right? That's why education doesn't work. Because it's at its best, it perfects mediocrity and control and perpetrates that forward. That's what we're fighting against.
Yeah.
And so what happened to you? I have the same. Every leader in the faith, if they're honest with themselves, they have the same experience. Where one day you woke up, you realized you were not truly free, though you were in Jesus, though you were serving Jesus. And you began against your own will. And at that moment, you felt you were betraying everything about you that's church. And you began to make this change on the inside of you. It felt uncomfortable. It felt people even looked at you like, what are you doing? You felt like you were betraying everything that's in you. But you will find the path of freedom. That's entrepreneurship. That's innovation. Think about entrepreneurs, those who brought new things. Think about those guys who the internet and Microsoft and Apple and all this and Elon Musk and all these guys that came up with something that's like, this is gonna turn the apple cart upside down. And they pursued it. I wish every Christian would have the same experience you had, because I had it. I know exactly how it feels like. And once you're free, you never again want to be in bondage.
Boy.
Here's the problem. Most Christians are in bondage.
So talk to the person who's listening to this, because I know there's going to be a lot of them. And we're just, maybe there's a man listening to this and he's just afraid to take that step, right? Afraid to step out, afraid to kind of move out of what has been either a cultural norm or a family norm or a trajectory that he felt he was just set on. But there's a dream in his heart and he wants to pursue it. Where does he start?
Well, first, be willing to take a risk. Freedom.
Boy, that's the thing.
Freedom.
It's risky.
It's risky.
It's
risky.
You
may be wrong. That's one risk factor. You may be persecuted. That's another risk factor. You may fail. You may
failure is a teacher.
So you don't take risk. That's the first thing. Because without risk, none of this is possible. When your husband and you were about to take risk, because you could have been wrong, Heidi. You could have been wrong. That's the first thing. Second thing,
we have been wrong.
Exactly.
I think, and we have been wrong. I was just telling everybody, I'm working on a manuscript, like for a book that I want to write. And you want to know the title of it?
What is it?
It's called "Well, That Didn't Work."
I'm going to read that book.
Just all of the things.
Can you send me a copy?
I absolutely will. I might have you write the forward for it, because I think
that didn't work. How many times that happened?
Work. Over and over.
That's right.
I mean, there have been. Every, like, I can think of things that we tried that didn't work in parenting. I could think of things in marriage that didn't work. I can certainly think of things in business. I ran for Congress.
That's right.
And you could go, well, that didn't work, but yet God was still at work.
Exactly.
Maybe that didn't work, but God was at work. And so we got to stop being afraid to step out, right? We got to stop being afraid.
I like that.
Come on.
And that would set so many people free. Some of it may not work, but that's okay.
That's okay.
In the discovery process. Do you know every time my wife warned me about this company, when she kept saying, one day I said, babe, because we teach you, they shouldn't do anything apart from your mate, right?
Right.
I said, babe, I know what you're probably right. I said, but there's something in me.
Come on.
And then one day God set me free. God said, even if it doesn't work, I will work it together for your good.
Yeah.
I said, honey,
Come on.
I got it. She said, what? I said, the Lord spoke to me. And he said, even if it doesn't work, I'm going to work it together for your good. At that moment, we came on one accord.
But you just made a really important statement, which is you got to be, if you're going to go out and try something new, you got to be on the same page as your spouse. How important is that?
Oh, yeah. And I thank her. Today, I said, babe, thank you. Because she gave me the freedom to be wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
She believed in you.
She believed in me.
Yeah.
So, because I was risking failure for me that the organization we've built for the last 20 plus years will fall apart. Because the thing about what we do, Heidi, is that our failure then gets to a question of character, right? Because we held to a much higher standard, right? People don't just say,
it's true.
Oh, that didn't work.
Right.
They say, well, was God ever with them? They say,
look at Job's friends.
Exactly.
I mean, all you got to do hear Job who has
all this stuff.
a life of success.
That's right.
And when he comes to a real period of trusting, everybody turn their back on him.
Like, one night of God teaching biblical entrepreneurship. Right. Whoa, wait a minute. Position to heal thyself.
Yeah, right.
That's the added pressure. So the freedom to be wrong is also the case. But for those people, I would say, first, take for a second, I would say, know that you're not alone.
It's good.
Right? As you begin that journey, you'll discover a community of people who sovereignly will begin to come around you. You will discover, right? You can't do it by yourself. I've been so privileged that with my board of directors, my advisory board, investors, donors, people who just come alongside me, Black, white, Chinese, folks that I would have never known, Heidi, who just come alongside me and say, Patrice, I believe in you.
Yeah.
I see what you see.
But that's a lot of Bill. He's a cheerleader.
Oh my God. He's, and all of that. So then lastly, I would say this. I like you saying, it may be oops, that didn't work, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Oh, that's such a good book. That's good for entrepreneurs too, by the way.
I'm telling you, I'm writing it. I have all this, because when I write a book, I've written lots of books now, but when I write a book, I always start at the end and I work my way backward.
Oh, wow.
Like, what is the thing that the Lord's been teaching me?
Wow.
And how did I get from here to here? And then you kind of work your way.
You know what I like about your perspective? Because I always say to people, see, I was a D average student, so my perspective is different. But you were like an honor roll kid, probably like an A student, but with the same ruggedness, right? Your perspective, because you follow the rule. You're one of those people who try to do it right.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have a perspective. And here's why I say that, because what I learned later is that, Patrice, you were an idiot. You didn't do the minimum, right?
Yeah,
seriously. You always.
I learned the same thing, but for a different reason.
I was one of those guys who always did the minimum.
Yeah.
But not you, right? And so your perspective brings such a breath of fresh air. Because what I like about it, I was a staff member who was like one of those, honor roll. I say, if we were in school together, you wouldn't have liked me, right? But today we work so well together. The point I'm making is that what I like about your perspective, you know what it takes to be an A student, but you also understand the trapping of that. And that brings, that brings a whole nother perspective. That
I really think you can do all the right things and miss where it is that God wants you to do, because you're not looking for the little drops, the little breadcrumbs that the Lord is leaving you along the way. And the people that are in your life are moving you toward this trajectory, because this is a college preparatory program and this is what you're doing. But the Lord never had any of that for me.
Isn't that incredible?
And I think sometimes as parents, and I really, as a homeschool mom, I love to encourage moms and dads to do this. Let your kids fail. Let them fail. Let them try new things. I can't tell you how many businesses. You've met my little one, Sailor. She's our youngest daughter. That girl is a going concern. She has all these things she wants to do. She wants to be a pilot and she wants to be a ballerina. And I think when Melissa was helping her come up with an email or something, she was like the dancing pilot or something. She has all these things she wants to do. And we were talking to her about some of her dreams in the car the other day, and I could feel my chest tighten up, because in my spirit I was like, that is dumb. That is not going to work. You are going to get, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get, or I'm going to lose a bunch of money trying to help you do it, or whatever it is. And my husband was like, let her dream.
Amen.
Let her dream. We got to let our kids dream. We got to let them fail. And one of the things I love so much about you, and you've had a tremendous impact on my son. I mean, he's just,
I love that.
And I think he wants to find out more about the unique gifting that God has given him. And he's got a gift in sales, which I'm like, dude, that is a gift, because I don't want to do that. And he loves it.
What made me respect your son, him and I used to do, when he was a student, because he was just so unique. Even I started doing lunch once a month. And he was doing sales on 100% commission. Yeah. Going door to door. Yeah. I said, this kid's got it. And he was so excited about it. He was. I said, I just got to get this kid to work for me. I mean, I said, could you just come work for us? I mean, yeah. Yeah. And literally the other day, I said, I need that boy. Yeah. And one of my staff talked to him.
That's right.
And called my staff.
And he made the connection.
And said, Patrice, remember Heidi? Remember Spencer? Mm-hmm. I said, Spencer said, I've been thinking about him. He said, well, I was talking to him. He wants to know if you had, I said, do I have him call me like yesterday?
Yes.
Right? Because those kind of kids are rare. If you go back to American history, do you know one of our greatest businessmen in America were door-to-door salesmen?
Yeah. You got to have chutzpah to do that. The rejection. I mean, Spencer would come home and tell me stuff. I was like, why are you doing that? That just sounds like, no, I would not want to do that. I am not going to somebody's front door so they can yell at me and say, didn't you see the no soliciting sign? It was right over with the grass grew over it, but still, no soliciting. And he just was undaunted.
And then he was also doing with integrity. Because I remember when he was telling about how he was applying the things that he was learning in my class into his sales process.
And it bothered him what was happening.
Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. And so when you have that combination, it's amazing. So Spen, if you listen to this, I can't wait for you to start working with us.
Come on. It's gonna be good. Tell us a little bit about where listeners can find you, how they can find your entrepreneur course. Can a homeschool parent buy that course, or does it have to be done in a classroom setting? Tell us about it.
All the above, right? So if you are a Christian school, we can bring our curriculum to your school, like Cornerstone. Mm-hmm. If you're a college, university, same thing. If you are a church organization, you want to do summer camp, you can do the same thing. If you're just a parent homeschool, you can do it online with your kids and just buy the material, and we kind of guide you through the process. So all the above.
I love that. People can find you at Smart Oregon Solutions and the Nehemiah Entrepreneurship Community. Yep. You are a national treasure, Patrice, and I'm just so happy. Patrice Tsague. Did I say it right that time?
My aunt made me stay in America.
I am so glad. Well, and you have such a unique story, and your love for this country is palpable.
Well, it's made me who I am. It freed my family. That's the first thing.
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, you and I have this in common too. I love this country, and I want to see Christians in every sphere of influence. One of my biggest, my heart's passion in so many areas to see Christians flood the marketplace. Amen. And we should be in politics. Politics determines policy, and policy shapes nations. Why would Christians not want to be in the policy shaping business?
My mother used to say that with a pen, they can make you rich or poor.
Boy.
100%. Let me speak a bit to you. Some of your audiences may be, kind of concerned about the other aspect of Trump that many of us as Christian are concerned about, which is the issue of, whether it's character, whatever it's done. Let me speak to that for a little bit. One of the things that we miss, Heidi, is this. Where as Christian, we call, God raises up leaders, kings. I gave a talk the other day to the Oregon, the elected officials in Oregon.
Really? I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that.
I'll send you the talk.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And one thing I share with them, I said this, listen, and Oregon is not exactly the... So I said, listen.
I mean, look at the governor. Okay.
I said, you've been ordained to be in your position. I said, whether I like it or not, whether I agree or don't, I'm called to submit to you. I said, having said that, the gift of self-government means that as I outsource the authority to organize, to policy to you, you now have a responsibility to understand the purpose of government, right? Which is, according to scripture, right, to protect
for the good of the people,
to fulfill the will of God. There's some key things. So as you look at any government, whether the Trump government or any government, ask you the question, are they walking down God's purpose for government? And if they are, then trust that God will bless the country.
Yeah.
Especially who it is. If I said that to the elected official in Oregon,
it's good.
Imagine in Washington. And I say, hey, look, you might say, this is a divisive time. We can't do it.
Yeah.
Well, what's the
time?
tagline for work? We are trail what?
Yeah.
Blazers. Let's blaze a trail that consider different. People who are elected officials, whatever your politics, whatever your party. Here's the thing. Would you live your conscience and bring God in? Yeah. Or will you follow the status quo?
Come on.
Or the party line?
Yeah. God would have you be a difference maker.
Amen.
Patrice Tsague, you're a treasure. Thank you for being here. I can't believe you live in my neck of the woods, and I'm just so honored and blessed you joined me on the show today. Let's do it again soon.
Let's do it.
You guys, thank you so much for listening to the show today. I hope you've been encouraged. I will link back to all of these websites in the show notes today. And we want to just encourage you to ask the Lord to show you what it is he has for you in your life. Some of you are going to be asked to run for office. Some of you are going to be starting your own businesses. All of us are called to be salt and light wherever we go in the community, knowing that God has a plan and a purpose for our life. Thank you again to our sponsor, to Not Consumed. Make sure you can check them out, notconsumed.com/Heidi. We love you guys. Have a great day. And I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith and culture.